Thank you all. Welcome to the 11th induction of the Fitchburg High School Athletic Hall of Fame. My name is Alan Toomley, and I'll serve as the General Chairman and the Treasurer of the committee. As the dinner service begins, I'd like to take time to recognize our committee members who have invested countless hours putting this ceremony together for you today. Please stand when I call your name. Karma Tuzignot, class of 1992. Cross country and track. Karma was inducted into our second class as a member of the 1989 girls cross country team. Mike Conry, class of 1958, track and football. Mike was inducted into our third class of the Hall of Fame. Paul Agnese, who's not with us today, class of 1997, football and track. Matt Lamy, class of 2004, football and basketball. Deb Dion, class of 1972, basketball and softball. Deb was inducted into our first induction class. Cindy Donlin, class of 1987, indoor track and outdoor track. Cindy was inducted into our fifth induction class. Hannah Capone Delgano, who's not with us today, class of 2010, soccer and softball. Mr. Harold Mateo, class of 2000, football and track. Harold was inducted into our 10th class as a member of the 1999-2000 boys indoor track team. Pete Stevens, class of 1958, football, basketball, baseball, inducted into our 9th class. And Sean Sweeney, our committee secretary and athletic department historian. Craig Antossi, basketball and football, Wachusett Regional High School, class of 1999, who is our athletic director. Craig has turned in his Mountaineers card, and he is solidly a Red Raider. In the back of your program, you'll find an insert with a QR code directing you to Lisa Yang Photography. Lisa was generous enough to spend her afternoon with us documenting this induction. Please stop by her site to purchase any of today's photos. Lisa, we thank you. Thank you also to Nate Glenny, the Executive Director of Fitchburg Access Television. FATV is documenting this induction. You can find them at fatv.org. And a special thank you to Mr. Fred Ellsworth, who's been entertaining you. Thank you, Fred. First of all, I hope you all enjoyed the dinner. I want to thank Lori Ruggiero and her staff at Great Wolf. As always, they go out of their way to take great care of us. Thank you. As I was putting the program together, taking care of seating, I'd get a number of requests from people that would ask me, hey, I'm coming for the Keenan, so could you put me next to a Keenan? And my reply was always the same. If you're in the hotel today, you're next to a Keenan. There's quite a few of them here. So I want to take a moment to thank you all for attending the Keenan family reunion that's taking place simultaneously. We have 3 Keenans being inducted today. So that's a testament to the family, to their loyalty to Fitchburg and Fitchburg High School, and we appreciate that. Over my last 32 years at Fitchburg High School, it's been an honor to work with 3 fantastic but very different and unique athletic directors. For the last few years, however, it's been my great honor and pleasure to work along our next speaker, who I can tell you without question is as tough and resilient as they come. Let's talk about running an athletic program during a pandemic, running a program during remote learning, pulling all the pieces together with focus and humility, and never losing sight of the goal to provide a first-class and quality athletic program to every high school and middle school athlete in the city of Fitchburg. Ladies and gentlemen, for comments from the athletic department, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Craig Antossi.
First off, thank you, Alan. On behalf of the Hall of Fame Committee, I'd like to say thank you for your tireless efforts to make today's event a success. That man should deserve and does deserve a huge round of applause. Thank you so much. Okay, so if this is the first time that you're meeting me, my name is Craig Antossi, and I'm your current Director of Athletics here for Fitchburg Public Schools. On behalf of the current Fitchburg High School Athletic Department and the Fitchburg Public Schools, I would like to offer our inductees a sincere and heartfelt thank you for your athletic contributions to Fitchburg High School while you walk the halls of your high school. The ownership in this community is unparalleled, and for that, I thank you, and I'm truly humbled. To our friends and families here in support of our inductees, thank you for seeing the importance of recognizing and supporting athletic excellence and the transformational impact that it can have in the lives of not only our students, but the greater community at large. Thank you for making the trip to West Fitchburg today to celebrate the inductees of the 11th induction class of the Fitchburg High School Hall of Fame. I would like to extend a special thank you to our dignitaries that are in attendance today. We have the Mayor of the City of Fitchburg, Stephen D. Natale. The Superintendent of Fitchburg Public Schools, Robert Jokola. We have the interim principal at Fitchburg High School, Tanya Jarrett. We have the police chief of the city of Fitchburg, Ernie Martineau. We have the, and I say this with a chuckle, the semi-retired Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Craig Shalafo, in attendance today. And I say semi-retired because he is graciously helping us at the high school right now, and he will go in as a member of the 1990 track team today as one of the assistant coaches. Thank you, Craig. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the man who preceded me in my role, Ray McCasenza, who's in attendance today. Thank you, Ray. Okay, so now we get to my thoughts. I don't generally hog the spotlight. I'm not a big man who likes it. I like to toil in the shadows. I'd much rather be on the field right now. We actually have a boys soccer team that's playing. But since I'm up here, I'll give them to you. The arrow of time is asymmetric, meaning that it's one-dimensional and one-directional. The head of the arrow trends in the direction of the future, but it has its origin in the present moment. The Hall of Fame process, by its very nature, is focused on the past. That's a place where the arrowhead has been, but no longer resides. Today affords us an opportunity to recount the events of the past as a group, cobbling together both verbal and written accounts of what transpired in a time that we can no longer fully access, except for in our collective memory. The induction ceremony is an exceptional event, and as we progress through the induction program today, I hope this room savors the opportunity to travel backward into the past in a way that individually we may not be able to access without the help of the additional perspectives provided by our contemporaries. In my position, I'm focused on the now. The present moment, that word present is a special one. Many of us think of presents on our birthdays. We think of presents on Christmas. And the present moment, this now in our life, is truly a gift to be opened repeatedly. With each now is a new opportunity to fully invest in the relationships that we have and in the opportunities that present themselves. In the present time, we have athletes that are in the process of writing their own stories. The accomplishments of today will become the induction stories of tomorrow. As a city and school community, too often we're focused on the accomplishments of only our football team, while neglecting the incredible accomplishments of our student athletes that do not play in front of large crowds. Football is part of the identity of our city, but the new residents of the city of Fitchburg also value sports like volleyball and soccer. In the past 2 seasons, we have qualified for the state tournament in boys volleyball, boys soccer, football, as well as boys basketball. These are massive achievements. The team that I'm leaving off is our girls' field hockey team. Just this past week, I witnessed our Lady Red Raiders play one of the most exciting games I've ever witnessed in their state field hockey playoff matchup against the Redmen of Tewksbury High School. That game was decided in overtime, and although we did not prevail, it had a handful of dramatic moments that would rival any play from any Thanksgiving in memory. Not the least of which was the incredible save made by our senior goaltender, Jillian Souza, in the waning moments of the second half on a penalty stroke to preserve the tie and send the game into overtime. As I speak to you now, our boys' soccer team is in Hopkinton on the field, playing to a 0-0 draw at half. Perhaps one day we will be speaking of their accomplishments in a venue just like this. In a moment, I will turn the microphone over to longtime Hall of Fame committee member and Hall of Fame inductee Debbie Dion to speak about the 50th anniversary of Title IX and the impact it has had on her life. But before I do so, I'd like to recognize the current Lady Red Raiders we have invited here today so that you can see the faces of the women who are actively writing their own stories in the pages of red and gray lore. At this time, I would now like to invite our Lady Red Raiders to stand, along with any other woman in the audience who has ever participated in interscholastic sports as a player or a coach or an official, and has felt the transformative impact of participating in interscholastic athletics as a benefit of the landmark legislation of Title IX. Ladies, please stand. Thank you. Now, while we have come a long way in 50 years, by my estimation, as a loving father of 2 daughters, we still have a long way to go. But I leave you with this thought, and some of you might recognize it because it's from a song, but I won't quote the artist. I won't put his name out there. The past that we celebrate today is history. The future, where that head of the arrow is traveling, that's a mystery, but today in the present, we celebrate you all. I'd now like to introduce Debbie Dion to the stage.
Craig, the father of 2 daughters, is going to be a tough act to follow, but I'd be delighted to share my story with you. Greetings to Red Raider Nation, and thank you for gathering with us this afternoon to celebrate the Fitchburg High School Athletic Hall of Fame. Congratulations to today's inductees for being the recipients of this distinguished honor. Thank you to the Hall of Fame committee for allowing me to speak with you in recognition of the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Please be informed that in 1971, prior to the enactment of Title IX, male high school athletes outnumbered the female athletes 12.5 to 1. Today, the high school girls' participation rate in sports is nearly 12 times higher than it was 5 decades ago. The Women's Sports Foundation recently credited nearly 3.5 million high school girls playing sports during the 2018-2019 school year, the most recent reporting year. I'd like to share my quest for athletic equality with you. I grew up on Marshall Street in Fitchburg, and I attended the Fitchburg Public Schools from kindergarten through grade 12. My early athletic endeavors were highlighted by playing touch football in the street with my brothers and the neighborhood boys. Our asphalt playing surface stretched from telephone pole to telephone pole. Scoring an extra point or field goal required kicking the football over the wires above the street. Sure, we played basketball too. A piece of plywood nailed to a tree served as the backboard. And yes, I won my share of contests when challenged to a game of horse. But as a young girl, I sensed that the wide world of sports wasn't treating females fairly. I was insanely jealous of my brothers and those neighborhood boys who competed in Little League Baseball, Biddy League Basketball, and the youth ice hockey leagues at the Wallace Civic Center. But much to my delight, there was a girl playing ice hockey with the boys. That girl, local ice hockey legend Kathy Lawler, offered a glimmer of hope for female athletes. I bided my time playing tennis with friends, riding my bicycle in the neighborhood, swimming, and of course being a spectator at boys' sporting events. But let's fast forward to the fall of 1969 when I started my sophomore year at Fitchburg High School. No, there were no varsity or junior varsity sports for girls. So I made a deal with my beloved mother, and she allowed me to walk down the hill after supper to watch the boys play basketball, but only if my homework was done first. So you can bet that none of my assignments were missing or late. So I spent the winter months as a spectator, sitting in the Brickyards bleachers on Academy Street and wondering if ever I would wear a uniform representing the Red Raiders. Well, my luck changed during my junior year, and in December 1970, I suited up for the first ever girls varsity basketball team at Fitchburg High School. I shared a spot on that first roster with the likes of Gail Sultan, Beth Ramberg, Casey Ratliff, Debbie Bennett, Debbie Beliveau, and Holly Foster. We were delighted to play for Coach Elsie Studley and represent the Red Raiders on the hardwood floor. The yearbook referred to us as Coach Studley's superstars. But here's the bottom line. We were all just thrilled to have finally received the opportunity to play competitive sports. When I graduated with the class of 1972, I had played only 4 seasons of varsity sports, 2 seasons of basketball, and 1 each of softball and tennis. My teammates, coaches, and I were proud pioneers for female sports. I was humbly honored by my own induction into this prestigious Hall of Fame with the first class of athletes on November 4th, 2001. I shared the spotlight that Sunday afternoon with 2 other well-deserving female athletes. Kathy Lawler, the local ice hockey legend I previously mentioned, and Luella Early, a track and field sensation. Now, I promise you this story is going to get a whole lot better. Do you know what happened on June 23rd, 1972? 13 days after my high school graduation, President Richard Nixon signed Title IX into law. This federal civil rights law prohibited and continues to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex in educational programs and activities in schools receiving federal financial aid. Our own Fred Sullivan once called the 37 words in this groundbreaking gender equity law, and I quote, "the Magna Carta of women's sports in America," end quote. Although I was unable to reap the full benefits of Title IX as a high school athlete, I made up for lost time in college and beyond. I enrolled at Fitchburg State College in September 1972, and I majored in elementary education. When I received my degree in 1976, I had played an astonishing 13 seasons of varsity sports, 4 each of basketball, softball, and volleyball, and a lone season of tennis, all while donning the dark green uniform of the Fitchburg State Falcons. I was inducted into their Hall of Fame with their inaugural class on November 19th, 1994. I owe a humble debt of gratitude to Title IX for simply giving me the opportunity to compete, coach, and officiate as a female. I expanded my dreams and took full advantage of a myriad of opportunities. I taught for 34 years in the Fitchburg Public Schools. I coached the freshman girls basketball team in the late 70s and the early 80s. I directed elementary school intramural basketball programs, and for 16 winters, I proudly and confidently officiated in the male-dominated world of high school girls basketball officiating in central Massachusetts. Yes, sports made a positive impact on my life. At this time, I would also like to recognize the young ladies seated in the back corner. As you know from Craig's remarks, they are currently participating in girls' sports at Fitchburg High School, and I have a special message for all of them. As student athletes, you are more disciplined academically. Success begins in the classroom as you strive to maintain the academic eligibility required to participate in sports. Sports teaches you how to win and how to lose. But more importantly, they teach you that a successful team needs individuals to contribute in a variety of roles. 80% of women leaders played sports growing up. Along the way, they acquired the skills that would empower them in their successful careers. Confidence, determination, commitment, teamwork, perseverance, respect, tolerance, time management, and leadership, just to mention a few. 50 years of dedication by female athletes paved the way for your participation today. We can celebrate the growth of female sports, but it should be noted that girls still have fewer opportunities to participate in high school sports than boys did in 1972. There is much work that still needs to be done to level the playing field. Ladies, unified athletes, girls' sports teams members, whatever sport you play, you are now responsible for the foundation for the next 50 years of female sports. I salute all of you for the effort you make as student athletes. I wish you success in the classroom. Study hard. Best of luck to you in your athletic endeavors. Play hard and play fair. We all owe a heartfelt thank you to Athletic Director Craig Antossi, to your coaches, to your teachers, families, and friends for their staunch support of you and girls' sports at Fitchburg High School. You go, girls. And in closing, I'd like to issue a challenge to everyone in this room. Please, please go above and beyond in your support of female athletes and the sports they play. Your daughters, your granddaughters, sisters, and nieces all deserve the opportunity to experience their right to participate in competitive sports. Their dreams will expand, those doors will open, and your dreams will become reality. Let's go, Red Raiders. Thank you. Go, girls.
Thank you, Deb, very much. We've reached that moment you've all been waiting for, so with the able assistance of my historian, Sean Sweeney, we will get started. Ladies and gentlemen, I offer for induction to the Fitchburg High School Athletic Hall of Fame, the 1936 baseball team.
If there's anything Fitchburg High fans love to discuss, it's which team in FHS history is the best. Oh, one can look at a particular team and argue they are the best, based on record and the players that team had. It can be a fruitful discussion. For many in this room this afternoon, when it comes to teams, that 2000 football team was arguably the best football team in FHS history. 12-0, and several Hall of Famers on that team. They can make a case for it. Now, I'm a product of the 90s era. We'll discuss that one in a bit. But sometimes when discussing things of that nature, we often overlook the challenges, the what happened off the field that made those events extraordinary. Well, from my era and up to 2000, if you can't think of it, let me refresh your memory. Our 1937 FHS building was aging. Our science labs were out of date, our library too small to meet the needs of 1990s students. You may remember that we were put on probation by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges because of those issues. And there was this little problem of having only 3 minutes to go from the 3rd floor of the annex to the other end of the 4th floor. No wonder our track teams were so damn fast. Yet I want to put on offer for you the teams from the 1930s era. They had multiple basketball titles under Clarence Amiot, and that 1933 football team also went undefeated and beat an undefeated Leominster team on Thanksgiving morning too. But what did they have to deal with off the field? First, a little thing called the Great Depression. I don't think that needs any explanation. Second, and here's a history lesson for you, students in the mid-30s had to deal with double sessions at B.F. Brown following the December 1934 fire that destroyed the 3rd FHS building. Now, for the students in attendance today, you go to the 5th version of Fitchburg High. Those double sessions moved FHS kids to the afternoon session, while the junior high kids continued their classes in the morning. Some FHS students almost had to decide between work to help provide income to their families or going to school. We will say that Principal James Chalmers, a coach during the early portion of the Amiot era and a great supporter of our athletic teams, said that students should not have to choose between the two, and that the administration would work with students to ensure their educations continued. Now let me add one more for you. In March 1936, in the days after the FHS basketball team returned from New England's, warm temperatures, just like what we're dealing with now, led to severe melting, and the North Nashua River overflowed its banks. Millions of gallons of water and silt and debris flooded downtown, including historic Crocker Field. We remember with fondness how on Thanksgiving that year, with Crocker still recovering from the flood, and with FHS trailing Leominster 6-0, Amiot made the Raiders change out of their muddied uniforms for the second half, while Leominster still had to play with the weight of additional mud on theirs. That final result, Fitchburg 7, Leominster 6. But the flood also had a drastic impact on our inductees this afternoon, the 1936 baseball team. With Crocker unplayable, Amiot and Loring Reed Stevenson, the head coach, had to look into other options. Now, Low Playground was used as our practice facility, but it was unsuitable for games. Have you seen that short porch in right? Makes Yankee Stadium look cavernous. So Amiot got on the horn. The Summer Street grounds weren't available, and bonus points to anyone who can tell me what the Summer Street grounds are now. St. Bernard's said no. Hey, Ray, can you do something to retract that? And so the 1936 baseball team would play all 8 games and would win all 8 games on the road. Starting with a win over Murdoch and continuing on with wins against Leominster, Clinton, St. Bernard's, Ashby High, Framingham, and others, Fitchburg High rolled, scoring 108 runs while only allowing 25. This team would unfortunately not take part in the state tournament that year, but the Raiders can say they beat the state champion, that being Greenfield High, in our final game of the year. The members of that 1936 team include the following: Guy DiBenedetto, Morris Cleveland, Pat Latore, James Flynn, Toivo Jacala, Tito Torcoletti, Joseph Torcoletti, Frederick Shaw, James Wyman, Lyman Bates, Donald Ossie McLean, James Leo, Roland Croto, Jess Dwyer, Raymond Gina, Rasmo Tagliavia, Kenneth Jackson, Charles Robertson, James Mahunin, and manager Joseph Bramante.
Accepting on behalf of the team are Kathleen and Charlene Flynn, daughters of James Flynn, and Susan Jewell, daughter of Ozzie McLean.
Hi, I'm Sue Jewell. I'm Ozzie McLean's daughter. I don't do this very often, so I'm not going to be very good at it. So bear with me. In April 1936, FHS coach Stevenson felt optimistic about the coming baseball season. His team had a solid roster of fine ball players. On the schedule were familiar rivals and strong competitors like Leominster, St. Bernard's, Framingham. A few games into the season, each one a victory for the Red and Gray, Stevenson realized that this 1936 ball club would be a team to remember. For everyone involved, that magical season ended too quickly. The team finished with a perfect record, and on June 8th, 1936, the Sentinel reported that FHS ends baseball season without defeat. A remarkable team, one the coach and ball players were proud to be part of. My father, Donald F. McLean, known as Ozzie, pitched for the 1936 team and was a good hitter as well. My dad threw from the left side and was known for his dazzling assortment of pitches and was nearly unhittable. I'm proud of my dad and honored to represent him here tonight. The Red Sox and the old Boston Braves showed interest in Dad, but he signed a contract to play with the St. Louis Cardinals minor league. After some time, he threw out his left shoulder. Needless to say, surgery in those days did not happen. Dad came home to my mother to raise a family. I don't know how good a professional ball player he may have been, but he certainly was a terrific father and grandfather. Dad continued with his love of baseball by playing in local leagues and through his sons, Donnie and Barry. He coached leagues for many years. Dad would be thrilled to be remembered with his teammates and coach from the undefeated 1936 Fitchburg High School baseball team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. Our next induction is a posthumous induction. I present to you for induction Mr. James Flynn, class of 1936. Sean?
Northern Worcester County sports fans of a certain age can remember how they turned to page 8 in the old Fitchburg Sentinel during the mid-1960s to learn about the previous night's exploits of the one and only Jerry Flynn. Anyone who paid attention knows what Jerry Flynn did in practically every barn from here to Worcester during the course of his high school days, whether it be in that bread box of a gym on Harvard Street, to Notre Dame of South Street, to Leominster High, and yes, even in our own Academy Street brickyard. But you may not know that Jerry's dad was an exceptional athlete for Fitchburg High School, who we honor this afternoon. James Henry Flynn entered Fitchburg High School in the fall of 1932 and began his interscholastic career on the varsity basketball team as a sophomore, and that began on a whim by the immortal Clarence Amiot. And usually, When Amiot had a whim, or if an inkling of change was necessary, he did it without question from the peanut gallery. He did it with Hall of Famer Ray Beliveau and found success. He did it with the legendary Billy Mackey and found success. That change came during a 28-25 loss to Quincy High School in early January 1934. Jimmy Flynn had made a couple of appearances in this young season before this, including his first ever interscholastic bucket against Keene, before seeing time against the alumni on Christmas Day. But once that loss to Quincy happened, and with Amiot not too pleased, he slid Flynn into the starting five alongside Mackey, moving Mackey to power forward. It soon became hard to displace him. He turned into one of the more dominant players on the red and gray over the next 3 years, alongside fellow Hall of Famer Jimmy Leo, with both young men finishing each night with either team high honors or second on the team in scoring. During his sophomore season, Fitchburg won 6 straight with him in the starting five. That dominance continued into Flynn's junior season, but in his senior year, with Flynn and Leo, an obvious dynamic duo, Jimmy Flynn hit game-winning shots in back-to-back games. While scoring 10 in a double overtime thriller against Brockton, he scored the game-winning deuce to give FHS a hearty victory. 2 days later, Flynn scored the winner with 20 seconds left against Worcester South, 26-25. And it should be noted that South was the best team in Worcester that winter. Now, while Jimmy Flynn was pretty good on the hardwoods, he was exceptional on the baseball diamond. A 2-time captain of the FHS baseball team, Flynn made his baseball debut in his sophomore season with 3 hits against Clinton. One of those hits was a 3-run homer in the 8th inning. Not a bad debut. The hitting, as they say, was contagious. Against Leominster, he had 2 hits, including a triple against the Blue Devils, before going 3 for 4 against Gardner 4 days later with a double, a triple, and a home run. In all, he had 17 hits during his sophomore season, in which Fitchburg went 4-4. 8 of those hits were extra base hits with 2 homers. FHS only played 5 games in 1935, but Jimmy Flynn, now the captain, had the 2nd highest average on the squad and played shortstop. He had 8 hits, 3 of which for extra bases, in a 4-1 season. But Jimmy Flynn saved the best for last. In 1936, Flynn, Leo, and Ossie McLean were the leaders on an FHS baseball team that would not suffer an interscholastic defeat. In all, Flynn hit .581 in his senior year with 16 hits. For his 3-year career, he had 41 hits with 17 for extra bases. But keep in perspective that Red Raider teams in Jimmy Flynn's era played a grand total of 21 games. That is the equivalent of 1 season today. He was a consistent hitter for FHS, bar none.
Accepting, on behalf of James, are his daughters Kathleen and Charlene Flynn.
Congratulations to all of the Hall of Famers here today, and especially to the inductees being welcomed in this afternoon. On behalf of my family, I would sincerely want to thank you for honoring my dad, James Henry Flynn, into the 11th class of the Fitchburg High School Hall of Fame, for both his individual achievements as a 3-sport athlete and as captain of the 1936 undefeated baseball team. Throughout his short life, my dad had an insatiable love of sports that my brothers, Tom and Jerry Flynn, also inherited. My oldest brother, Tom, is in the St. Bernard's and Fitchburg State University Halls of Fame, where he played varsity in 3 sports at each school. Tom spent his career as athletic director at the Bromfield School in Harvard, where he also taught math, coached basketball for over 30 years. My youngest brother, Jerry Flynn, who is pretty well known in the area, for his basketball and refereeing skills, has been inducted into 5 Halls of Fame. First, as a charter member of the St. Bernard's First Hall of Fame class, and ending with the induction into the IBO National Hall of Fame as one of the best referees in the country. My family is proud of all 3 of them. Our dad died almost 50 years ago when he was just 56. I know some of the happiest and most meaningful years of his life were spent growing up in West Fitchburg and playing sports for Fitchburg High School, especially baseball. Today, as you honor him, I like to think that there is a sports heaven where my dad is now united with my brothers, Tom and Jerry, and with his coaches, Coach Amiot and Coach Stevenson, and with his 2 best friends, Ossie McLean and Jimmy Leo. 7 great athletes, 7 Hall of Famers that I hope are sitting around together and joyfully talking smack about sports and about Fitchburg High for all eternity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next induction features a standout track and field athlete, and oh, by the way, he could play a little football. I present to you for induction, Mr. Ryan Logan, class of 2003.
The proof is in the pudding, ladies and gentlemen. Historically, Fitchburg High School churns out excellent athletes when it comes to track and field and football. The number of athletes, male and female, that came through B.F. Brown Memorial with visions of excelling for FHS on the D-shaped oval at Crocker Field, and did just that, number in the thousands. Our next inductee came to us thanks to skiing. Yeah, that one shocks you, huh? Ryan Logan, from the class of 2003, came to Fitchburg High before his sophomore year, the year the new high school building opened. The son of Don Logan, himself an FHS football player and track star from the 1960s years, had attended Leominster High for his freshman year, but he looked to transfer out. As legend has it, the former administration at Leominster didn't care for Ryan leaving school for several months to chase his skiing dream. Ryan competed at the U.S. Junior Olympics in moguls, and that was held in Utah. After the fall season wrapped up, the Logans headed west, and they'd be back for the spring. LHS said no. FHS said, we'll work around your schedule. And we're so glad that Leominster said no to Ryan's skiing, because we reaped the rewards of that particular decision. With size and strength, Ryan helped lead the Fitchburg High football team as both quarterback and kicker, making practically every point after, field goal, and punt for the next 3 years. In his senior year game against that old school, he scored the game-winning TD from 72 yards away on a QB sneak. In another game against Gardner, he carried the ball 5 times on quarterback keepers and gained 165 yards. Let's just say it, Ryan was simply outstanding on the gridiron. After football season was done for his sophomore and junior years, he'd head out to Utah and train for skiing, and he'd be back in time for mid-March and the start of spring track. During his years at FHS, he was the top point scorer by the Red Raiders, en route to an unfathomable, now get this 1990 boys, 16,618 career points. To date, no one else, either before or Logan arrived or after, has achieved 5,800 points in one season during their track careers at Fitchburg High School. Logan was rather consistent in scoring points, and he was also rather flexible in his eventing. Hall of Fame coach Chris Woods relayed to us that due to Logan's athleticism, he could move him to different events to counter the opposition. And with him doing that, it just wasn't fair. The Red Raiders were able to claim the District E titles in his junior and senior years of 2002 and 2003, the Mid-Watch League title, and was undefeated in dual meets during the spring of 2003. He also held records in the outdoor track decathlon. He still holds the triple jump record and the 110-meter high hurdles set a year apart in the weight men's pentathlon, the long jump, and the 100-meter dash, all set in 2003. In that weight pentathlon, he also has scored the most points in it too, 3,887 points. Before we bring Brian to the dais, we must relay to you this one story. He had suffered a knee injury at one point in his high school career, and he wasn't able to ski during his senior year. After the 2002 Thanksgiving game, a 28-20 FHS win, Ryan shut things down and had surgery. He would be in a cast for several months. Now, Coach Woods' hope was that he'd be healthy in time for spring track. If he got him back by May 1st that year, he'd be happy. That would be right in time for the district and class meets. But you can't score 5,801 points in a couple of weeks. He made it the entire season. But there was a little bit of a catch. Chris said that while Ryan was cleared to perform, there were certain events that he couldn't do, such as the jumping events. That means no triple jump, no long jump. That also meant no hurdling either. Running events and the shot put were fine. So in one meet against Shrewsbury, Ryan went through the regular events that they had agreed to, and then added one more, the hurdles. And after that heat was done, in which Ryan had finished first naturally, Ryan's father, Don, went up to Coach Woods at the finish line and said, "Chris, I thought we agreed Ryan wasn't going to do the hurdles." And Coach Woods, not taking his eyes off his clipboard, said, "I thought we did too." For Ryan Logan's efforts in red and gray, he received a football and track scholarship to UMass Amherst, where he played all over the field for the Minutemen. As a freshman at UMass, he had a roommate who was in this room this afternoon, that being co-inductee Frank McDonald.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ryan Logan.
Thank you, Sean, for the kind words and embellished stories. I really don't remember many of those events you speak of. Must be CTE, Coach Cosenza hitting us on the helmet with his whistle, or Coach Woods running us like dogs in the track meets. It's another great day for the Red Raider family. Thank you, Alan Toomley and the committee for hosting this event. To all past inductees, today's distinguished recipients, and to my two head coaches, Ray Cosenza and Chris Woods. The real reason why I'm standing here today is the time invested in me by my parents, Don and Tina Logan, my grandparents, coaches, teammates, friends, local supporters, and now my wife and kids. As many of you know, I am from Leominster, born and raised. My grandfather was a longtime teacher and principal at Leominster High School. My mom was a longtime teacher in Leominster for 45 years. The real outlier was good old Chopper Logan. Well known in these parts, Fitchburg through and through. As the story goes, I was playing my first year of football at Leominster High School, my freshman year. They say that was the best freshman class to come through in quite some time. I was the starting quarterback with a little 8th grade mentoring from Coach Chris Young to learn the sport and ultimately the rules and playbook. It paid off for sure. However, the Leominster politics started to creep in and I was sharing time at quarterback as well. Crazy idea ran through old Chopper's head and said, maybe you should check out Fitchburg High. They're keen on having you ski and they have a really good upper class of athletes. I checked it out and I never left. The bigger, faster, stronger program and the energy that was happening inside that weight room would give anyone the chills. 6 a.m. workouts Monday, Wednesday, Friday meant the boy from Leominster was up at 5, dad and mom at 4:30 to get breakfast and ready for me to take a ride to Fitchburg. That was the commitment for my entire family, which brings me to my next thought. Family. Tradition never graduates, a slogan that was on all of our Fitchburg High School t-shirts. Family is all about carrying the tradition, and FHS family is strong. A good buddy of mine and then college roommate and fellow inductee Frank McDonald was just a centerpiece for me coming to Fitchburg. That senior class, my sophomore year, who went 12-0, was the definition of family. The backbone of that family were the coaches. Coach Gazenza, the DiGeronimo brothers, Coach Shalafo. I saw him earlier. I said, the Fox. That guy was in better shape than all the starters on the team, let me tell you. They were all in the gym at 6 a.m., setting the tone for greatness. As I became an upperclassman, I captained the track team for 2 years and the football team my senior year. All the hard work in the past couple of years certainly paid off in football. My senior year, we opened up with Severian brothers and laid the wood to them, 34-17. Looking at the stats in my scrapbook, my dad kept a scrapbook for all the news clippings, and we had over 3,000 yards rushing in that backfield that season. Finally, on Thanksgiving, we got to play what was touted the best Leominster team in 30 years. Well, we beat them too, and my decision to become a Red Raider was solidified. On a side note, I might be one of the only players ever to beat Fitchburg and beat Leominster. I'm almost done. Ryan Davenport, gave me his speech. His was 5 pages, so I thought I'd be the same. Shit. Maybe not. Hang on. Jumping the gun. All right. As you heard the introductory speech, we had a lot of success both on the field and the track. Coach Woods is the real reason why I stand here today as well. I learned so much about what my body could do through track and field. As many of you know, I'm really, really ADD. So my attention to one thing is not ideal. So Coach had me do everything, except for pole vault. They didn't have a pole that would support my weight, and thank God. Each week we would try to figure out what events would get the most points for our team to ultimately win. Sometimes not as planned. As I vividly remember the story that Sean shared, I had a few events I was going to do, and the hurdler that was at Shrewsbury that year was supposed to be the best, and I said, screw that, so I threw my blocks down and I beat him. We needed the points, so that's why I did it. I knew I was back, and we had a really good shot at winning mid-watch. Winning individual events is great, but a team win at those big events shows how hard work as a unit turns into success for all. There are so many great stories and memories, but I will never forget the support I had from my parents. I had an indoor track meet at the Reggie Lewis Center and finished around 7:30 at night. It was the state indoor pentathlon where I set 3 school records that day. At 7:45, we were in the car for a 4-hour drive to Sugarloaf, Maine for the Junior Olympics freestyle skiing event. At that time, I was ranked in the top 5 skiers for under 18 in the country. This was just one of the many unselfish gestures I had from them. I think we were playing Milford on a Friday night, and instead of taking the bus home with the team, we drove to Lake Placid so I could work on some ski jumping into the pool at the Olympic Training Center. Fact is, they loved it too. The success I was having was proof that their parenting and leadership was working. I only hope I could be as caring and loving as they are with my young children. I want to also thank my wife for giving me an amazing family with 2 beautiful boys. I love you very much, and I appreciate you listening to my glory days stories and forcing you to look at my scrapbook. I'm sure our boys will have some incredible stories too. Thank you all for being part of this day for us Hall of Famers, and to the senior class, beat Leominster.
As I said earlier, our next inductee wins 2 awards, induction into the Hall of Fame and for packing the hall with the most family members in one induction. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you for induction Mr. Barney Keenan, class of 1965.
It's good to be here in West Fitchburg, isn't it? And West Fitchburg is going to win. One of the great things about being a Fitchburg High fan is that it's a family affair, especially when you have families who have lived here for well over a century. And if you attend games long enough, you'll be able to see whose son and daughter or nephew or niece an athlete happens to belong to, all thanks to that last name. And at FHS, the last names in the scorebook have hardly changed over the years. One of those particular last names is the last name of Keenan. For those who know their history, Brian and Joanne's Keenan's West Fitchburg offspring were pretty darn good in that 1990s era, if I do say so myself. But even before they sat down to eat up Leominster, North Middlesex, and Brockton, it was their Uncle Barney setting the table. Barney Keenan of the FHS class of 1995 was, alongside classmate and Fred Rod Tolanen, undoubtedly one half of the driving force as to why the Red Raider cross-country and track teams continued their dominance deeper into the 1960s. Even in his sophomore year of 1962, in which he was one of 9 newcomers to the 20-man squad, Keenan consistently placed in the points positions. During his junior year, 2 events stand out as he really started to establish his place on the hills and dales of the North County. On Halloween 1963, FHS competed in the old Lunenburg Invitational, an event the Red and Gray dominated year after year, and Barney Keenan of FHS finished 3rd overall in 14 minutes and 3 seconds. 2 days later, Barney was the top FHS runner, 20th overall, at the Massachusetts Class A cross-country meet at Franklin Park. We finished 10th overall that day. During his senior year, Keenan continued to churn out impressive performances. He finished 2nd to Tolanen at Sima Park against Monadnock High of Swansea, New Hampshire, finished 4th against Lunenburg, 3rd in the Wachusett Invitational, and had 3rd place finishes against Notre Dame and Narragansett. But most memorable of his senior cross-country campaign was when Fitchburg thumped Oakmont 15-50 at Sima Park. Now, this particular finish was insane, as Barney and Rod shared 1st place in the race with 4 other Red Raiders, including Brian Keenan, in a swift 13 minutes, 16 seconds. That's right, 6 first-place finishers from FHS in one race. While Barney was pretty good at cross-country, we must examine his outdoor track career, which was stellar. During his sophomore year, he competed in the mile, but it was in his junior year that he made the leap to superstardom, doing so at the shorter distance of 880 yards, better known today as the half mile. The list of Barney's accolades at the 880 distance is truly, truly staggering. He registered first-place finishes in his junior year of 1964 against Cushing in the North Central Mass Conference track and field meet at the Bernardian Bowl by a measly 1/10 of a second, as well as a 1st against Leominster and a 1st against the old Worcester Commerce High. He also had 2nd-place finishes in the Class A Massachusetts Secondary School Principals Association meet, try saying that 5 times fast, at Algonquin, as well as in the non-interscholastic co-op festival at Sima Park. During his senior year, he expanded his repertoire, along with 1st in the 880 at the District 3 meet, 1st against Monadnock, and a 1st in a tri-meet with Worcester Commerce and Worcester South in that discipline. He added 1st in the spring medley, along with teammates Bill Jeffrey, Tony Katniss, and Dick Auger at the North Central Mass Relay Carnival, and 1st in the 880 relay with Mike Romance, Steve DePace, and Steve Bedard. But he saved the best for the city championship held at the old stadium for Notre Dame at the corner of South Street and Electric Avenue. In helping FHS capture the city title, Barney Keenan went into the Notre Dame complex's record books with a track record, 2 minutes, 2.5 seconds. Simply outstanding. After a post-grad year at Maine Central, Barney attended the University of Maine, where he ran track. Following college, he embarked on a long career in education. In 1971, he was appointed vice principal at Greenville, Maine High School, where he had been that school district's director of physical education, as well as the head track coach. It should be noted that Greenville didn't have a track or uniforms. But that didn't matter. During his first year, the Lakers won the state title in the mile before winning the Penquist Regional Track title. Barney spent well over 40 years in education, retiring in 2012.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hall of Fame, Mr. Barney Keenan.
Thank you to the Hall of Fame Committee. It is indeed an honor to be a member of the Fitchburg Hall of Fame. My special appreciation to my classmate and Hall of Famer Warren Muir, who nominated me, and to Mike Conry, another Hall of Famer, my brother Brian, Coach Gassingay, Sean Sweeney for their advocacy. Thank you. Thank you to all who brought me to this special place and time. In looking to frame what I wanted to say, I was taken back to an article that Steve Sweeney wrote about a year ago about, as he would say, the historic Crocker Field and the tradition and history of FHS track. It's been over 50 years since I last set foot on the Crocker Field track. So I wanted to recapture those traditions and the history. So I went down to Crocker Field Friday night and walked through the gates of the clubhouse. The boys were getting ready for their football game that night with their jerseys laid out. But they let me through, and I walked through the back door and down the stairs, the back stairs, which immediately brought memories of the junior-senior relay picture, which was taken on those stairs in 1965. I walked to the middle of the field and then on to the track side. It was quiet, and no one was there. There was no noise. At first, it reminded me of an Irish monastic site. Gray walls, the silence, the solemnity, the cut grass, the wind through the grounds. No sounds, just a sense of the past and all those who competed there. I looked at our very unique D-shaped track. Back then, I never gave it a second thought, but who has a D-shaped track? What school has a track with 3 straightaways? But I remembered it was built for baseball. The track and field were an afterthought, and wondered if they only knew the joy and the pride generations of Fitchburg High athletes would have from this adaptation of the historic Crocker Field. In the quietness, I remember the locations of the field events, which were in front of the stands, the high jump and pole vault pits in sawdust, no pads then. The shot and discus circle, where Warren glided across the circle, setting records that would last 50 years. In the center of the field was roped off during meets for the javelin, with teammate Dennis Bellevue, whose record also stood for 50 years. And then I remember the long jump pit right in the front, where my dear friend Lothar Huckleby set his school record lasting 50 years. Great track and field athletes, dear friends, and great memories. Then the silence was broken. Something in my memory heard a voice on a bullhorn, a young coach striding around Crocker Field in an oversized tan FHS coaching jacket. Ed Gastingay was in his first year as an assistant track coach, and his voice crackled through the blowhorn. Third call for the 880. Third call for the 880. Anyone who has competed knows this command. Even as I knew that the voice was in my memory, I stiffened. My body began to prepare like involuntary muscles reaction. My focus sharpened. All that mattered was the race. I focused. I heard myself going over race strategies. Again, this is last Friday night. Get out early. That first turn comes fast. Don't get boxed in. Make sure you're clear by clubhouse. Start your kick at the flagpole. Pass before you get into the final turn. Discourage your opponent. Almost by instinct, I stepped on the track and began to walk around. I walked through the first 440. It was a bit longer than I remembered. But as I walked up to the end of the first quarter, as clear it was in the spring of 1965, I heard himself. The man who created the tradition and established the record of excellence for Fitchburg track coaches and track and field successes at Fitchburg High School. He was on his stopwatch, with all due respect, in his inimitable Finnish accent. I heard him calling out times. 61, 62, 63. Keep it up, Barney. It was Erkki Kuutinen, once again, on the track. This is exactly how he wanted to be remembered, giving support, challenging you, offering guidance, encouraging his athletes. Erkki Kuutinen touched everyone he coached. He reached out to all. He gave no preferences. He just wanted you to compete hard. He wasn't a rah-rah guy. He was motivated. He motivated you just by being himself. After all, he was an Olympian. He engendered respect by everyone. His personal integrity and his commitment to teaching and to making a difference is his legacy. Perhaps more than anything, he taught us how to aspire, to have aspirations, to set goals, to go beyond what you think you can do, to go beyond your life circumstances, as he did as an immigrant from Finland. He entered the Marine Corps, fought in the Pacific during the war, became a U.S. citizen, to become a U.S. Olympian, to go to college under the GI Bill, and to become a teacher and a community leader. To achieve, to aspire, not just in track, but in life. He had a lasting impact on my life. It's been over 60 years. I still hear him. That's what a coach can do. The impact they have on a child's life is forever. Being a role model, working toward and caring for the success of others. In that light, and in the spirit of Coach Kuutinen and Coach Gastingay, I want to recognize those here who are or have been coaches at any level, boys and girls, high school, elementary, teams, recreation leagues. You have chosen a noble profession. You've been given the gift to be able to touch and change the lives of children you coach. They will remember you. Make the memory of their involvement in sport one that they will treasure forever. I certainly did. I loved everything about track and field, the spectacle of the meets, the combination of individual and team accomplishments. When I was at St. John's School up in West Fitchburg, Sister Mary Bernard, Luke will remember, asked the class to write an essay on the famous person you admired. Most chose President Kennedy or Bob Cousy. I wrote about Abibi Bikila. Abibi Bikila was the first African runner to hit the world stage. He was an Olympic marathon champion in Rome in 1960, finishing at night under the lights of the Rome streets, running barefoot, yes, barefoot. It was magical, the imagery, the visuals of his gold medal was a lasting memory of determination and possibilities. And it was this identity I nurtured and cared for into adulthood. Track created the opportunity for me to go to the University of Maine, which brought me to finding and enjoying academic life and scholarship, sports, running, and career interests aligned to become a teacher. To completing graduate degrees, becoming a principal, serving in the faculty at the University of Maine, and later as dean at the University of New Hampshire. I am a fortunate man. I have been blessed. Success in track and cross country gave me a beginning, an on-ramp, if you will, to a college education and to a rewarding career and a beautiful family. This is not my first Hall of Fame. I have Hall of Fame friends and classmates. The friends I had in 1965 remain today. Some are here tonight for a mini reunion, as you can see. Tom, Jack, Polly, Ken, Dennis, Howie, and others who cannot attend are here in spirit. Thank you all for your friendship. I have Hall of Fame cousins, lots of cousins, the Conrys, the Burks, the O'Neills, the Vergaris, the Caligars. We shared our childhood together, and the bonds we created then will always remain. We're especially proud of our cousin Maureen Burke Morin, whose daughter Tanya has been appointed principal of Fitchburg High School. Congratulations, Tanya. And if all the women athletes here tonight want a role model, they only need to look at their principal. I have Hall of Fame nephews and nieces. Many were great athletes, both here and in Fitchburg, those and some up in Maine. I loved being an uncle. I have Hall of Fame brothers, Brian, Brandon, and Sean, and sisters-in-laws. Perhaps one sister-in-law deserves special recognition. She had 6 boys. All of them played multiple sports for Fitchburg. All 6 contributed to football, basketball, track successes. 4 of her sons are now in the Hall of Fame. 2 of the boys received the MVP at the Thanksgiving Day game. So if there's any consideration of a contributor status to the Hall of Fame, I would suggest Joanne Keenan has fully met those requirements. Brian would say it was all his doing, but we know it was JoJo. I have Hall of Fame children, Bernard and Lana. Each have found happiness in their lives and on their own terms, and I'm proud of them and the families they have created. I have Hall of Fame grandchildren, 6 of them, 5 boys, 5 girls, 1 boy. They've been the joy, and without a doubt, the best looking, smartest, and most well-behaved grandchildren in the world. I even now have a Hall of Fame great-grandchild, Tommy. There he is. Finally, I have a Hall of Fame wife and partner, Rena. I love you so much. And I have Hall of Fame parents, Captain Bernard and Ruthie Keenan. We miss you, wish you were here this afternoon. So I'm grateful for all this wonderful honor, and I'm deeply appreciative to all those who made it possible. Thank you all. Three minutes?
You did better than Fred Sullivan. Ladies and gentlemen, our next inductee has made his way back to Fitchburg from Arlington, Texas, to be with us today, and we are very happy to see him again. Ladies and gentlemen, I offer you for induction to the Athletic Hall of Fame, Mr. Lloyd LeBlanc, class of 1972.
We here in Fitchburg have been lucky in the amount of gifts we have received from other parts of the country and from other parts of the world when it comes to athletic success. We've inducted a few fabulous Finns, some hardy Midwestern stock, and athletes who were born in other parts of the world. Today, we induct a young man who came to Fitchburg by way of Baltimore, who starred in football and baseball for the famous Red and Gray. Lloyd LeBlanc came to FHS in 1970 and is still remembered for his defensive ability on the gridiron and the way he dominated hitters at baseball diamonds across the area. In baseball, he was the opening day starter in 1971, throwing 2-hit ball against Shrewsbury. 3 weeks later, he made a rather impressive splash on the scene when he went the distance and fanned 6 in a 7-1 win over Burncoat. 5 days later, yet another complete game win against Gardner, fanning 11 Wildcats. But he saved the best for his senior year, where he would headline the pitching staff. 3 days after pitching an inning of relief against the Wildcats, the right-handed LeBlanc tossed an absolute gem against crosstown rival St. Bernard's. He had a no-hitter going through 7 before the Bernies came through with a double and an RBI single in the 8th. But those were the only hits STB managed to scratch out. Nope, and that's because Lloyd LeBlanc, formerly of Baltimore's Loyola High School, dropped a career-high 15 Ks on the blue and gold. In all, Lloyd LeBlanc fanned at least 75 in a 2-year interscholastic career, including 43 in his senior year. Now, when Lloyd came to FHS, he had to wait his turn to carry the football in Hall of Fame coach Marco Landon's offense. Ahead of him in the depth chart were a couple of Hall of Famers in their own right, that being Mike Pucko and John Marabello. He did make some highlight reel plays, though, such as in the second game of the 1970 season against St. John's, where he made a spectacular catch in triple coverage, gaining an FHS first down. 2 weeks later, Fitchburg managed to earn its first ever win in Nashua with a 14-6 victory. Legendary Fitchburg Sentinel sports writer Gordon Newell wrote that Lloyd was, quote, outstanding from his position. Against Gardner, 2 picks and a 22-7 win at Stone Field. Fast forward to the Athol game, and our inductee picked off a pass to keep the other Red Raiders at bay. This pick early in the 4th quarter led to an insurance TD in a 20-8 Fitchburg win. For his efforts, Lloyd was a North Worcester County Sports Writers Association honorable mention to the defensive all-star team. During his senior season, with Pucko and Marabello graduated, Lloyd moved up the depth chart and shared carries alongside FHS Hall of Famer Mike LaSorsa, who was a junior at the time. And in that year, Lloyd was exceptionally dynamic as he had a number of kickoff and punt returns and carried the ball 122 times for 749 yards. But again, we talk about his defense here, especially in a scoreless tie against Brockton at Rocky Marciano Stadium late in October 1971. Gordon Newell wrote, and I quote, "The deadlock was surely a great team effort, but the tremendous individual performances of Lloyd LeBlanc, Steve Ciccolini, and Steve Richard should not go unnoticed. LeBlanc greatly contributed to whatever offensive success the Red and Gray displayed, and also spurred the defensive unit that did so well. The rangy senior was in on so many tackles that one Brockton fan was overheard saying he thought there were at least 2 FHS players wearing number 41. Against St. Bernard's the following week, LeBlanc found himself credited with the most spectacular play of the game, a 52-yard run from the FHS 36 to the Bernies 12, with Fitchburg winning 14-0 over at the Bowl. He had a 68-yard TD run against Nashua's Bishop Girton, and then sparkled in a 34-6 win over Athol at historic Crocker Field. He picked off the Athol QB on the 3rd play of the game. He did have 2 Ds and set up 2 TDs and helped set up the second FHS score with a 58-yard run. But in his final interscholastic game, he might have saved the best for last, part of a 12-7 win over Leominster in a game that had been postponed a couple of days due to 18 inches of snow. He scored the game-winning score on an 85-yard run, breaking through the line and outracing 3 Blue Devils to the end zone. At that time, it was the longest TD run from scrimmage in the history of the North County Classic. It remains Fitchburg's longest TD run on Thanksgiving morning. As a senior, Lloyd won the Martinez Trophy given to the MVP of the team, as well as the St. Germain Trophy as the Red Raider MVP in the Thanksgiving game. Not only that, he won the defunct Tom McCann Trophy, given to the most outstanding football player in the city of Fitchburg, along with a first-team offense all-star nod by the sports writers. After graduating from Academy Street, Lloyd spent a post-grad year at Worcester Academy, where he teamed up with a guy named Masciarelli before playing football for a year at Colgate on a full football scholarship. He left after his freshman year to pursue his music career. Under the stage name of Jason LeBlanc, Lloyd is an award-winning musician, performer, composer, and producer. He and his wife Dawn have been married for 38 years, Living in Arlington, Texas, they are neighbors with their daughter Amber and her family.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hall of Fame, Mr. Lloyd LeBlanc.
Wow, this is neat. I didn't bring any paper, but my daughter taught me how to use the iPad, so here we go. Not yet. Darn. Yeah, I'm nervous. First, I'd like to thank the committee and Alan Toomley for this great honor. I didn't even know Fitchburg had a Hall of Fame. And I get a letter in the mail saying, hey, they want to bring you up. I say, yay. Anyway, I have some people to thank. First of all, Alan Toomley and the entire committee for selecting me. It's truly a humbling honor. Also, I'd like to thank all the other inductees. I'm sure you guys are as excited as I am to be here. And this is a pretty cool day. This got started. They couldn't find me because when I left at Lloyd LeBlanc, I ended up changing my name as an entertainer, as an author. And I don't think they could find me on Google. And they might have thought I was dead because there is no Lloyd LeBlanc on Google because I changed it right after I got out of high school. So I'd like to thank first Beth Fallon LeBlanc, married to my brother Risto LeBlanc. She was kind enough to present my information to the committee so they could find me and not have to make this a posthumous event. I'd also like to thank, let me put this up here, might be better. I'd also like to thank FHS Hall of Famer Debbie Dion, a fellow 72 alum, for gathering the information that has led to this honor. Debbie spent an entire month buried in the archives compiling the stats used to present me to the committee. Thank you for your time and your diligence. It's truly appreciated. Also to Lori Broder. She sorted through all the clutter and typed out this presentation that made me look worthy of this honor. I would read, like everybody that comes up here, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my family. I've been very fortunate and blessed to have my best friend, my bandmate, and my wife of 38 years, Dawn, by my side all these years. She's been my rock and the love of my life. I can't thank you enough for the love you've given me. Everyone should be so lucky. I'd also like to thank my daughter. There you go. Well warranted. 38 years. They had bets that it wasn't going to last 5 minutes back when I was in the day, being a band leader and a singer and stuff. It ain't going to last 5 minutes. I'd also like to thank my daughter, a businesswoman, also a bandmate, by the way, who can smash a 270 down the center of the fairway anytime she feels like it. She's given our lives a meaning, and we'd be lost without her. Also, to my award-winning tattoo artist, business owner, son-in-law, Rocky. Thank you for everything you do for us and for Amber. We are fortunate to have you in our family. And thanks to my brother, Mark, also a Hall of Famer, as part of the 1973 state championship team. I thank him for being here today and for making it possible for my mother, who is 89 and kicking right over there, to be able to be here on this great day. Oh my. We've been separated by half a continent for most of my life, and I haven't been able to see them for years and years and years, and it's really nice the last couple of days to have my family and all our family get together last night for dinner, and a lot of them be here today. It's just a great day. This Hall of Fame business, by the way, came to me in the summer of 2021 when I received an email from Debbie Dion concerning my pending induction. I was floored. The news couldn't have arrived at a better time either. Just 3 weeks prior to that letter, I had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And as you might can tell, I was pretty down about that. Then I read her email. Wow. What a great surprise. God does have a way of moving us along in life, and He did not disappoint. In the last 12 months, I've dealt with a couple of cancer-related surgeries, a prostate removal that did not eradicate all my cancer, 5 days in the hospital with a near-death bout with sepsis, 40 recent radiation treatments, and an ongoing hormone therapy treatment that has, check this out, gentlemen, that has my testosterone level at 0. Where's Frank Thomas and Doug Flutie when you need them? Needless to say, it's been a tough year. But as of 2 weeks ago, October 20th, I found out that my fight with cancer is over, and I'm finally 100% cancer-free. And now, I'm a Hall of Famer. Thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Fitchburg High School itself. Even though I was only here for 2 years, and those 2 years were the most influential years of my life, I grew up in those 2 years, acquiring the qualities, skills, and work ethic that would carry me through my life. Coach Landon, my teammates, friends, and classmates were all very instrumental in my development, and I can't thank you all enough. And finally, I'm very grateful and proud that I had the good fortune to play an instrumental role in our Thanksgiving Day game, scoring the winning touchdown, which has made it possible for the class of 1972 to go through our entire lives being able to say, we beat Leominster. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next inductee is a 1965 graduate of Fitchburg High School.
We already
present
had
to
him.
you for induction, Mr. Walter Beatty.
Class of 81.
Did you give me incorrect information, Mr.
I
Sweeney?
did not give you incorrect information. I never give incorrect information.
Listen, Fred,
Fred's with us.
my mistake. Take
Class
it
of
away.
1981.
Okay, we made him a little bit younger. Good job.
That's okay. That's okay. So we're going to say it. Baseball at Fitchburg High School doesn't necessarily get the respect it deserves. The sport has been played at Fitchburg High as early as 1882, and we have found references in the old yearbooks where the outgoing senior classes implored their underclass fellows to get out and support the team. Furthermore, it was baseball, not football, which was king in these parts during the early 20th century. We found references to local aggregations such as the Bijoux, representing the old Bijou Theater on Main Street, utilizing Crocker Field well into September. And believe it or not, the start of the Amiot era in 1913 was not widely reported on. Why? That was because an adult baseball team from Fitchburg, under the management of Tommy Sellers, and a team from Leominster competed in a 3-game set at the old Circle Street grounds that became a 4-game set. Why? Fitchburg had won 2 of the first 3, and Leominster wanted some payback. Doesn't matter, Fitchburg won the whole kit and caboodle 3-4. But we're getting off track here. There have been a number of standout baseball performers in red and gray. We look to Jimmy Flynn and Ossie McLean, to Ronnie Thompson and Pete Stevens, to Ryan Davenport and Jason Toomley, all of whom are Hall of Famers. Our current crop of Red Raiders, which won their fall ball league last week, has a couple of standout players too, and if you're in the area next spring, we encourage you to take in a game. Now, we've inducted 2 baseball players today, plus a team, with 2 more players to go. Let's now induct our 3rd baseball player for today. Walter Beatty was a hard-hitting member of the class of 1981, where his sport was truly baseball. As a Red Raider hardballer, he never missed a ball game, let alone an inning of play during his 3-year interscholastic career under the tutelage of Mike Bork. It wasn't an odd sight to see Walter trudge up High Street to Mechanic in those days to hit with Bork out of the old jugs machine in the Crocker Gymnasium during the winter. In 3 seasons, Walter Beatty never hit less than .350. He swung a rather heavy bat, sprang balls to all fields, and when he got a hold of one, it traveled, usually to the press box or even to the sundial in right center. With Walter in the lineup, Fitchburg beat a perennially good Holy Name team all 3 years. Those particular talents and attributes helped him receive such accolades as 2-time Central Mass All-Star team member, as well as TNG Super Teamer during his senior season. Longtime Leominster baseball coach Emil Johnson recalled his battles with Fitchburg on the diamond, and he had praise for our inductee. When I first started, Fitchburg had a formidable baseball team. They had some good players. Walter Beatty was a hell of a hitter in the early 1980s, and it was quite a rivalry. You had to pitch your best pitcher because you knew you were in for a ball game. But not only that, Walter's play caught the eyes of Major League scouts. 21 years after FHS Hall of Famer Ronnie Thompson signed with the Boston Red Sox, the Chicago Cubs called and drafted Beatty in the 13th round of the 1981 draft. He was the 313th selection overall out of 1,515 players selected. He even beat out a guy named Dykstra by 2 picks. Walter was also pretty good at football, helping to bring FHS out of the doldrums. In fact, it was Walter who helped the new coach at the time get more kids to come out for the team. That coach was John Dobzinski, who told yours truly, and I quote, "Walter was our starting quarterback, defensive back, a great leader. He was one of the guys who turned the program around for me as a coach and for the school. He was a baseball guy, but when he got on board, he was 100% in." Fitchburg High went 5-4-1 in that fall of 1980, and Beatty was a rather important cog in that team. He started the season at quarterback, handing off to fellow Hall of Famer Todd Becker, and should-be individual Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer Craig Shalafu, out of the wishbone offense. But as the weeks went by, Beatty shifted to defense, and he had a great deal of success on that side of the football. Case in point, homecoming weekend against St. John's. Back then, FHS played its game on Saturdays, but on this particular Saturday, saw the Red Raiders and Pioneers play the only game in the Commonwealth that weekend due to some biblical rains hammering away at us. Beatty recalled that game, telling us that St. John's had the ball, 4th and goal from the 6 going towards the Circle Street end. St. John's ran an end around and started a foot race. Walter stopped the guy at the 1. He also made big plays in a 29-28 come-from-behind win over Bedford. He recalled that Dubba had a great halftime speech with Fitchburg trailing 28-0, and that helped spur the red and gray forward. In that one, Bedford ran a tight end drag with a play fake to the fullback and a dump pass to the tight end. Completing that pass would have put Bedford in field goal range. Walter Beatty knocked that pass down. Walter has now turned to coaching, baseball, naturally, and has been all over the country. During the season, though, well, this past season at least, he's been catching Pittsburgh Pirate games on TV. Why the Pirates? That's because his son Tyler, a former standout and state champion for our friends down at Auburn High, was pitching for them.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 16-year younger inductee, Mr. Walter Beatty.
For a 1965 graduate, I look fantastic, so I don't have to worry about that. First, I want to say thank you to the Hall of Fame committee, particularly Mr. Sweeney. He's the one that put my nomination in front of the committee Mr. Toomley, Mayor, Principal, Athletic Director, and Tossie, thank you very, very much. It is an honor to go in to the Fitchburg Hall of Fame with my fellow inductees, but more importantly, a former teammate, friend, who will precede me, Mr. Mark Jackson. The Jackson family, I basically grew up with them. I've coached Junior. Michael doesn't like me because I used to look at Val in the hallways. I could never get Mike to smile at me ever, even when I gave him a compliment about his hockey exploits, or he still was always lurch. I'm here today. I grew up in Lynn, Massachusetts, city 15 miles on the ocean, 15 miles northeast of Boston. I did not grow up wanting to be a Red Raider. I wanted to be a Bulldog. In fact, there's a lot of similarities between Lynn, Mass. and Fitchburg. We both have prominent presence of General Electric. We both have prominent rocks. Lynn has Red Rock. Fitchburg has The Rock. I came here August 19th, 1978. As my classmate Linda Lizotte Banal will tell you, I have a pretty good memory. It's a blessing and a curse. I don't forget moments, times, or faces. On August 21st, my big brothers, Keith Gelinas, Donnie Sauerbutz, who were my neighbors, took me to Crocker Field for the very first time. I had never in my life seen such a beautiful, magnificent field. Keith Gelinas, he went to the left to the cross-country locker room. Don Sauerbutz went downstairs to the football locker room, and I was on my own. And so I come from a school that my colors in junior high were blue. So I'm in blue shorts, I'm in a blue t-shirt. I take a walk out to home plate. And I'm standing at home plate, I'm looking around, I'm noticing that there's bleachers going up over shortstop. The first person I ever met from Fitchburg High as a representative screams out, "Get the F off my grass!" Hey, welcome to Fitchburg. His name was Roop LaQuire, and Roop made sure I understood my field, my clubhouse, my rules. Alrighty then. And do you realize what color you're wearing? I'm wearing blue. Not here, you don't. Come into the cage. I don't know if anybody remembers the cage. I went down to the cage to get a red pair of shorts that were extremely short and a red shirt. Put those on. Roop went on to tell me great stories of the baseball exploits where Crocker Field home plate was by the covered stands. I think he took a liking to me because he spent some time with me. And then I took a look to his left, and Roop had a leather sweater. And I looked at the leather sweater, and I was going to go to a school called Lynn English. My whole life, I wanted to be a Bulldog. To play sports in a city that Lynn had formidable state championship football teams, baseball teams in the 80s, basketball teams. Suddenly, I'm in Fitchburg, Mass. I don't know a soul. Now, they told me that Fitchburg was hilly. That was my dad's kind of first, hey, we're moving to Fitchburg. It's the second hilliest city in the state, in the country. Oh boy, this is great. Well, Donnie had football practice. Keith left, and I walked home. We lived in West Fitchburg, log cabin back in the day. And I will tell you, on my way home, I'm thinking, this isn't that bad. This not a lot of hills. Until I took a right after Ray's Variety. Now, I grew up on a hill. This hill made my hill that I grew up on seem like an anthill. I get to the top, huffing and puffing. I see my stepmother at the time. She says, geez, you're out of breath. I said, you guys drive up that thing. I just walked it for the first time. I'm not looking forward to that. Going forward, I came to Fitchburg because of my dad. He wanted a new life, a home, and a pool. I don't know why he wanted a pool, but he was heck bent on having a built-in pool. On November 23rd, 1978, I attended my first Fitchburg High School football game. It was at that exact moment that I went from a Bulldog wannabe to a Red Raider. I watched faces of my classmates, the upperclassmen, walk off a field. And at the end of the game, I heard Coach Whitey scream in the locker room at the top of his lungs, "This is Raider country, and you should be proud to be a Red Raider." That spring, I did not know any baseball players. I was asked to participate in a voluntary baseball workout at Crocker Elementary School. I showed up. The upperclassmen at the time had the jugs machine, and I won't say we got hazed, but let's just say instead of hitting the 100 miles an hour tennis balls, we had to take them off the body. And so I had to stare there with the helmet on and take tennis balls at 100 miles an hour, and that was their way of saying, welcome to Fitchburg High School. But Coach Burke, who I'll get to in 1 second, took kind of a liking to me, asked me to come back, and every year, whether it was after indoor, I guess we called it workouts on the second floor at Fitchburg High indoor track, I would take a walk up to Crocker and then walk back home. I ended up making varsity my sophomore year in high school. I remember Coach Burke saying to Mark Fanuff, "Do you know who Wally Pipp is?" That's Wally Pipp. And I started in his place because he had a senior infraction. I believe it may have been a libation, I'm not sure. But he missed his first game I started, and I ended up playing for all 3 years. I want to tell you that being a Red Raider is something that I'm extremely proud of. If Lynn, Mass was my foundation, I built my house as far as being an adult, a father, a coach, as a Red Raider. Being around mentors, Coach Gastingay, Coach Creed, Coach Burke, Coach Brazil, Coach LaSorsa, Coach Ciccolini, Coach Masciarelli, Coach Crank, Coach Dubzinski, Coach Roger Mercier, Coach Lanciani, and Mike Burke. Baseball, not a big sport in Fitchburg High. Sophomore year, Roop tells Coach Burke, "Mike, you're not going to practice on this field until it thaws out." "Okay, can we clean the field?" "Yes." We went out. I don't know if Craig Shalafu remembers this. Back in the old days of Crocker, you had a steel drum for a trash can. They were very, very heavy. We proceeded to fill it to the top with trash, rocks, glass. Roop comes out and says, "Mike, goddammit, I told you not to get on my field." To which Mike Burke physically picked up that steel drum over his head and emptied the contents back onto the field. That was Mike Burke. When Mike Burke was angry, he was the Hulk. If he turned into the Hulk during infield practice, you had a really strong likelihood you were about to get a blue dot. Now, what a blue dot was a line drive, was a hard hit ball. If you did an Olay, you were running for a long time. Nobody wanted to do an Olay. On this particular day, after Roop had given him the riot act, he decided it was blue dot day and we were going to get blue dots during infield. Picked a bad day not to be wearing a supporter or a cup. Anyway, I did not get an Olay. I did get a couple off the chest cavity. I still have a black and blue from 1979, 1980. In closing, I want to say I am deeply honored to have been given consideration for the Hall of Fame. I want to thank my family, my mother, Serena, my sister, Terry, my mom's husband, Raymond Kirk. I want to say a particular thank you to the friends, Keith Gelinas, Don Sauerbutz, my very first friend in Fitchburg, Linda Lazat, Butch Banal, and her husband, Rob, Don and Ann Sauerbutz again, Craig Shalafu, Mark Sumala, Bo Caputi. They came here today, and I'm deeply appreciative. I did not realize Fuski was going in, and he still looks fantastic. Him and Mark, I think, look identical to their high school graduation photos. I clearly do not, even if I'm a 1965 graduate. My wife is wearing my letter sweater. I bring this up because my sophomore year, at the completion of my varsity season, Roop, whose son John went to school with us, he was our classmate, Roop called me down to go to the cage. He said, "I have a surprise." Now, back in the day, wearing a letter sweater as a sophomore was a big deal. Back those days in the old CMAC, you had to be a dude to play varsity sports as a sophomore. Being able to walk through the halls of Fitchburg High with that letter sweater was a really big deal. There's one person I want to say a big thank you. I kept him for last because I probably would never have been able to get through it. See, in 1981, 2 years removed, my dad passed away in 1979, my junior year. Steve Shifty LeBlanc took me into his home, made me a part of his family. His daughters, Erica, Jody, Missy, his then wife, Susan. I became a big brother and a son. Many of the decisions that I made in my life were selfish. I should have gone to college. I didn't. Every year, for 40 years, I was an uneducated man. I was a baseball guy. I could get a beer and a bag of chips at Slattery's. And what haunted me for 30 years to the day was Shifty saying to me, "Education lasts a lifetime. Baseball doesn't." Well, like a knucklehead, I didn't listen. I signed a contract, played 50 games, 26 at-bats, played once a week, was released. 30 years later, my son Tyler, who's here today, faced a decision as a first-round draft pick out of high school. We had an agent and an advisor. We had a house full of people, probably close to 20 people, 19 saying, you have to let him sign. You have to let him take the 2-point something, whatever it was. You have to let him sign. Back then, there was a deadline of midnight, 11:50 p.m. My son asked me to go into a room. Asked me, what should I do? Here is a guy who graduated high school, Lawrence Academy. He had an education opportunity to attend Vanderbilt University. They don't give Vanderbilt degrees in a Cracker Jack box. And for the first 3 years as a Vanderbilt student, it was difficult, academically, athletically. The weight of expectation is tremendous. But thanks to Stephen Shifty LeBlanc, he altered both of my sons' lives. It's because of Fitchburg High School that I can say both of my sons are college educated. It's because of Stephen LeBlanc putting me ahead of his family when I was a senior in high school. Being a Red Raider altered my life as well as my son's. It will have also altered my grandsons' lives and futures. So I want to say thank you for allowing me to ramble. I didn't write anything down. The last time I gave a speech when my son was with me didn't go so well. I hope this one went a little bit better. I want to say a special thank you to my wife, Karen. I met her in 1986, but she blew me off. Back in the days when you could take the phone off the hook and you would get nothing but a busy signal for 3 months. Today is the most memorable moment I'll have as a Fitchburg Red Raider. And in the words of Coach Whitey, this is Red Raider country. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. You know, after 32 years of being here, people ask me, when are you going to retire? Why do you keep coming back every year? I don't need to explain it. Walter just took care of that. I'm happy to say that our next inductee, I get to see more often than not now, because not only has he coached for us in middle school over the years, but after his retirement and that brief period of second childhood, shall we call it, motorcycles and camper trailers and what have you, sowing a little wild oats out there, and a lovely young lady who he recently married that has centered him once again. I'm happy to say that Mr. Mark Jackson has returned to Fitchburg High School as our cross-country coach this fall and will be with us this winter as our boys' indoor track coach. So it is my extreme pleasure to offer as our next candidate for induction, Mr. Mark Jackson.
There was a Facebook meme a few years ago circulating around which stated that you know you're a townie when you went to school or grew up with at least 3 police officers in your city or town. What the meme didn't say was this, that many of the police officers in your town played sports for your alma mater. In Fitchburg, that is so true. A look at the current 2022 roster of Fitchburg police officers, from Chief Ernie Martineau on down, sees at least 13 former Red Raiders student athletes, with 3 FHS Hall of Famers among them: Sergeant James McCall, Lieutenant Ryan Keenan, and Detective Frankie Balaguer. So today, we add another wonderful Red Raider who traded in the Red F for a gray badge to our Hall of Fame ranks, one who is Fitchburg High through and through. Retired Fitchburg Police Sergeant Mark Jackson was a member of the FHS class of 1982 who played 3 sports during his time on Academy Street. Nicknamed Action, Mark's bio in the 1982 edition of The Boulder notes that he is dedicated, sports-minded. Action is currently working for the good of FHS, whether leading the football team to victory as a co-captain or a senior class officer. I want you to keep that in mind as you listen to me ramble on here. Fitchburg High football was on its way back up after the doldrums of the late 1970s found itself shook off with the hiring of John Dubzinski and the grid work of Craig Shalafu, former fellow 11th class inductee Walter Beatty, and Hall of Famers Todd Becker, Tom DiGeronimo, and his co-captain, newly inducted Hall of Famer Mark Jackson. Craig, Walter, and Todd helped lay the foundation, while Deej and Action continued their good work with a solid fall of 1981. In that wonderful autumn, Jackson and FHS ripped off 4 straight wins to start that campaign, with Mark ripping off an impressive 75-yard touchdown run against Wachusett at Crocker Field, the 3rd win of that season. Handoffs from DiGeronimo went to the trio of Jackson, Bill Early Sr., and Vinny LaPasta, and that came out of a formidable Dubzinski offense known for its 3 yards and a cloud of dust mantra. Jackson and the Raiders were extremely competitive, going 6-3-1 during that fall, the tie a hard-fought 14-14 stalemate with St. John's. Mark was also a standout runner for the Red and Gray. That may be putting it lightly. In our second induction class, our esteemed and never forgotten first historian wrote about Ray Ablandi from the class of 1948. Ray was a prodigious sprinter who set the Crocker Field cinder track record in the 220 for outdoor spring track, a record which will never be broken with the switch to our synthetic surface and metric measurement. Ray Ablandi also set the indoor track record in the 300 during his time dodging the puddles on the 3rd floor. That record stood, his alone, at 33.8 seconds until Action Jackson equaled it. Along with being a co-captain for football his senior year, he was also co-captain for both track squads in 1982. He lettered in all 9 eligible seasons and was a Central Mass All-Star for football in 1981. After a year of football at Norwich, Mark entered the U.S. Marine Corps before taking a job with the Department of Corrections. But that's not all Mark Jackson did in his post-high school life. No, he came back to Fitchburg High as an assistant coach to not only Hall of Fame coach Chris Woods in the track program starting in 1984, but he also helped out with the transition from John Dubzinski to Hall of Famer Doug Romano as one of Doug's assistants. In fact, Mark served as the scout team running back during practice, doing so in full pads. Good for you. In 1994, Mark took a job at 20 Elm Street, the metonym for Fitchburg Police Headquarters, where he remained until his retirement in 2020. During his time at 20 Elm, he did a great deal of community outreach. And one of his great achievements, of course, was his work organizing the Fitchburg Police Association Charity 5K road race, a staple in the community. But an even greater accomplishment, in 2010, Coach Chris Woods approached Mark and asked him to join him in forming the Greater Fitchburg Track and Field Club. Not only that, when we brought our middle school cross-country and track programs back, there really was only one choice to lead the way as its coach. Now he's at the high school, coaching cross-country this season, and as Alan said, boys indoor track this winter.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Fitchburg High School Hall of Fame, Mr. Mark Jackson.
Good afternoon. I have nothing written down, nothing prepared. I'm just saying it. First, thanks to the committee for voting me in, and thanks to FHS. Thanks particularly to my parents, who in 1964 chose to come from a small town in Georgia, Omaha, to Fitchburg, which ultimately led me to being a Red Raider. Also, thank you to my prior teammates, Frank Marabello, John Romano, Chris Conrad. This is yours too, guys. I appreciate you being here. Special thanks to my beautiful wife right there for being so supportive. And this is great. I'm so honored and humbled to be a part of this whole thing here. I like to sort of try to keep my influence with my coaching. I see my couple athletes over there, Brooke and Sorrell, who I coach, who are going to be great runners in the future. Stay in tune to Fitchburg sports because we're on the rebound. We're coming back. And thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Coach. Our next inductee roamed the basketball courts in the winter and literally owned the baseball diamond in the spring. I present to you for induction, Mr. Brian Garvin.
There is a proverb out there that this particular voice learned after a number of years covering high school basketball. You cannot teach height. You can teach a player to dribble, sure. You can teach a player to shoot the rock, obviously. Why didn't that work for me? But you cannot teach something that is inherently natural. It is a proven fact, folks. It's probably not breaking news. FHS has had a number of tall players on its basketball teams, from Anastos Fanos in the national championship team of 1926 to Ricky Tianhara in the 1970s to Hall of Famer David Marshall in the mid-1980s. So when Brian Garvin, who would finish at 6'8" when it was all said and done, made his way to Academy Street, Hall of Famers Doug Crutchfield and John Cordio polished the young man into one of the premier centers in North Central Mass. Brian Garvin of the class of 1993 wound up a 3-year varsity standout for FHS at the Academy Street Brickyard, helping the Red and Gray to 3 straight Mid-Watch League championships, as well as Fitchburg's last Central Mass title in the 1991-92 school year as a junior. And when one looks at the talent surrounding him, including fellow Hall of Famer Zach McCall and 3-point sniper Ish Gelpi on the outside, his job was simple. Rebound, rebound, rebound. Get shorties in the paint, and when on the defensive glass, outlet, and get the fast break going. That 1991-92 team, one absolutely deserving of induction down the road, not only toppled St. John's in the Central Mass title game, also beat Edgar Padilla and Springfield Central in the state semifinals, but also forced overtime against South Boston in the state title game. During his basketball career at FHS, he earned Mid-Watch, S&E, and TNG All-Star status in the winter of 1992-93. He was also a Best of 80 All-Star, which comprised the top 40 boys and top 40 girls basketball players in the Commonwealth that year, was a member of the Weber Lumber Goodwill Basketball Tour to New York, alongside Zach McCall and other local heroes like Mark Giovino from St. Bernard's and John Economo from Lunenburg. Yet Brian was also a rather outstanding baseball player for Hall of Fame coach Ray Cosenza's FHS 9. Much like in basketball, he was a 3-year varsity player, and much like with basketball, he earned Mid-Watch, S&E, and TNG All-Star nods in his senior year. And while he was a solid role player and starter on the basketball team, he was an absolute stud on the mound at Crocker Field. At 6'8" and a southpaw pitcher, Brian Govan resembled Randy Johnson when on the bump. His delivery was nothing short of devastating, and he was the ace of the staff in the spring of 1992 and 1993. In 1991, he saw regular time on the mound as a sophomore. Fitchburg baseball was pretty good in those years, especially with Brian Govan on the mound. He helped lead FHS to 2 Central Mass tournament appearances as a member of the varsity. Brian continued on to Clark University in Worcester, where he would, to the surprise of no one, play 4 years of both basketball and baseball for the Cougars. He even captained Clark in both sports during his senior year and was the male athlete of the year in his senior year. After graduation from Clark, Brian went on to play amateur baseball in the Yawkey League. For those that don't know, the Yawkey League is the best adult amateur baseball league in the entire Commonwealth, hands down. During his time with the Yankees and Revere Rockies from 2000 to 2005, Brian went, now get this, 43-3 with a lifetime ERA of 1.02. That is Hall of Fame worthy, and he's also a member of the Boston Men's Amateur Baseball Hall of Fame. When Ray Cosenza reclaimed the head coaching duties of the baseball team in 2015, he had organized an alumni baseball game in August of that year. One of the players who came back to the diamond behind the new FHS for a little baseball and some heavy-duty trash talk, that would be Brian Govan. And on that sunny Sunday, Brian towed the rubber for an inning or two, a 40-year-old man pitching not only to his contemporaries, but to some of the younger FHS talent. And no, he did not take it easy on them. He absolutely brought it with a filthy fastball that no one could hit. A 40-year-old man in the best shape of his life. One onlooker, standing by, turned to Cosenza and said, "Does he have any eligibility left?" Cosenza frowned. Unfortunately, no.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Hall of Fame, Mr. Brian Govan.
They don't really make these for me. Maybe I should just sit down. Thanks to the committee. Alan, thanks Cosenza, Coach Cosenza for the nomination. I really appreciate it. Swain's great write-up. It's a great role for you. I really appreciate all those great. Coach Crutchfield and Coach Cosenza really made my career at the high school. All 3 years playing for both, just great role models, great leaders. And at that age, obviously, you need that. I was, a bit late developing, playing sports, but, they definitely got me on the right path, allowed me to progress as I needed to, have a career in college, and then obviously some afterwards as well. But I really am here today to really thank my village, my wife, Soraya, largely when I was graduating from high school, was commuting over from Germany to the U.S. as a teenager, and has since built a life here for herself and helped me build a great life for us out in Colorado, so I love you and thank you for that. My godparents here, Uncle Connie, and Auntie Connie, Uncle Jerry, true Leominster fans, and my cousin Michelle, but to their credit, every year for those 4 or 5 games we played against Fitchburg, they would always be tragic for the red and gray and not their unfortunate favorite team, Leominster. So I always admire that. My fellow Hall of Famer now, Todd Stephanies, is also here. Todd and I have been best friends since as long as we've known each other, as are our parents, going way back. Todd and I played both sports in high school, and we got to play together after college as well. He's here with his wife, Amy, and his dad as well. So I always appreciate your friendship, Todd, and your pushing each other on all the courts we played on and fields. And obviously, to me, my most important reason for being here is my family. I have 3 incredible siblings. My sister Melissa is here today. My brother Jonathan's back in Phoenix. My sister Alicia can't make it today. But just the level of love we have for each other and how strong and close we are, and we have been for the 48 years of my life and the rest of us. It means the world to me. I'm truly blessed, and I can't thank you guys enough for all you've done for me over the years. Two of Melissa's kids are here today, William and Greta. They represent my nieces and nephews, so I thank them for that. That means a lot to me. And then lastly, my parents. I can't say enough about them. They just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary a couple weeks back. So cheers to that. They lead by example. I wake up every morning thinking, how lucky I am to have them. I go to sleep every night, grateful that I have them in my life, as close as we are. They've always just been such role models for me in everything we've done as kids and now as adults. They continue to lead by example in all they do. They're retired now. They're enjoying their lives, but they still make so much time for everything that anyone needs. And I truly hope that I can live my life, as they have the rest of my days as well. So thanks again, everybody. I appreciate it.
Our final individual inductee is a little special to me. I watched this young man take over a football field with my son and a group of lunch pail athletes and propel themselves to an undefeated season in 2000. It's my pleasure to offer to you for induction Mr. Frank McDonald.
It has been said before, and we'll say it again. Fitchburg High School football rolled in the 90s. And in the months after the glow of our 1996 Super Bowl championship faded, the Red Raiders went back to work in prepping the Academy Street Brickyard for yet another banner. That happened in 2000, when that particular football team posted the third ever undefeated season at 12-0, following the Super Bowl win over Springfield Central. One of those outstanding players during that period joins the Hall of Fame today, and that is Frank McDonald of the class of 2001. Frank came to 98 Academy Street in the fall of 1997 and quickly became an asset to the success of FHS football. A versatile player who played fullback, tailback, and linebacker, Frank mainly played special teams during his freshman season, but started as middle linebacker on Thanksgiving morning. His final 3 years, though, was undoubtedly one of the best stretches in the history of Red Raider gridiron play. With Frank involved, FHS went an unfathomable 30-5, which included the undefeated regular season in 1998, the only blemish coming against Springfield Central in the Super Bowl, as well as the aforementioned 12-0 FHS football team in 2000, the greatest football team ever to wear Fitchburg red. During that 98 unbeaten regular season, Frank McDonald was a sophomore, but his presence loomed extremely large on the defensive side of the football. Frank was in on upward of 120 tackles. That beats out Eric Miles' 2008 season, as well as Hall of Famer Todd Becker's 106 in 1979. That season also saw young Frank get some snaps on offense, subbing in for the LeBlanc boys in Dustin and Andy, and that was just a look into what the future would be. During the 1999 season, Frank slowly entrenched himself into the offense behind fellow Hall of Famer Jason Toomley. All it took off, though, in 2000. During that historic season, FHS averaged 30 points per game at the beginning of the season, then had to fight tooth and nail in the month of October. Against St. John's, the Raiders came from behind to win, thanks to the powerful running of one Frank McDonald. Entering Thanksgiving, FHS had averaged 40 points a game in its last 5 games, but Leominster and John Dobzinski came loaded for bear. And while the Devils usually gave their best efforts on Turkey Day, so too did the Raiders. And this year was no exception, especially with 11-0 riding on it. Some second-half adjustments were made. Toomley ran the offense. Future FHS Hall of Famer Norman Cole provided the thunder. McDonald provided the lightning. And Tim Keenan provided the biggest play of them all in that 2000 Thanksgiving game. That set up a showdown at Worcester State against old friend Springfield Central in the Super Bowl, the third athletic matchup between the two schools in 10 years. We beat the Eagles in '92 in the state semifinals for hoops, and then in '98, well, you know what happened. In 2000, Fitchburg wasn't to be denied, as everyone got into the act. On the game-tying score, that triumvirate of Frank, Jason, and Norman each took the ball and drove it right down Central's throats. Then Jason had play fake to both Frank and Norman, then stepped back and found 10th class inductee Ryan Davenport with a 27-yard scoring strike. Just before halftime, though, Frank McDonald stepped up larger than life and flattened the quarterback from Central, forcing a fumble. Jimmy Alexander picked it up and raced to the end zone. Fitchburg had a 20-13 lead. But Frank McDonald, Hall of Famer Frank McDonald, let me correct myself, got the opportunity to end the season, the immaculate 12-0 season, on his terms. He scored the final TD of the year with some power running, putting Central back on the bus for a cold ride west. Tallying it all up, Frank's senior year was pretty epic. Over 1,500 yards rushing with 28 touchdowns as a senior. He served as a captain. He was named to All-State, was an All-Power Bar All-Star. He was an All-Star for both the SNE and TNG, and more importantly, was the team's most valuable player as a senior. That one paired pretty well with the defensive MVP from his sophomore year. Following FHS, he did a post-grad year at Kent School in Western Connecticut, where he caught the eye of Don Brown, the coach of the then 2 years removed from its D1 AA football title at UMass Amherst. He also played at Northeastern under Brown and played fullback at both institutions. Today, Frank's at the Worcester County House of Corrections, and this afternoon, Frank McDonald joins his 2000 football teammates Jason Toomley and Ryan Davenport in the Fitchburg High School Athletic Hall of Fame.
Ladies and gentlemen, Frank McDonald.
I also don't have anything written, so I'm just going to speak from the heart. First of all, thank you, Sean, for the good words. The committee for putting this together. This is amazing. It really is. Very honored to be here to be addressing this crowd. It's such a good accomplishment that I don't take for granted. A lot of people I have to thank for it. First of all, my family. Obviously, I'm here because of the 2000 football team, which was the greatest team the city's ever seen. But is not the greatest team I've ever played for. I currently still play for the McDonald family. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. My parents, I watched them wake up every day with 4 young kids, work their asses off, day in, day out, wake up, go to work, take care of us. I don't know how they did it. I have 2 kids myself. If you threw 2 more into the mix, I'd probably want to slit my wrists. Honestly, growing up was competitive in the household. I can tell you I'm the 4th best athlete in my family. I have 3 siblings who are studs in their own right. Nick, Justin, and Megan. Nick, a stud in the Special Olympics. Justin, future Hall of Famer in hockey, and Megan, future Hall of Famer in softball and basketball. We had some spirited competitions growing up. You guys made me better. You made me the man who I am today. To my fellow inductees, congratulations, well-deserved. I can't tell you whether we're the most accomplished group. I can tell you with conviction we're the best-looking group as I look at Ryan Logan and Mark Jackson. You guys make up for a lot of this. Thank you. Coach Cosenza, Coach Alfo, Coach O'Reilly, growing up in my house, it was a lot of hard work, respect, discipline. And all those things were reaffirmed at Fitchburg High when I got to you guys. We truly were a family. Norman Cole, I want to single you out, thank you. Chocolate Thunder, I do also have a nickname, Action Jackson. I was Mocha Moose in the backfield at Fitchburg High back in the day, just throwing that out there. Where was I? Anyways, thank you very much. Very appreciated, and enjoy. Have a good day.
On August 11th, the Fitchburg High School community lost a friend, a son, a father, and a teammate. Jeff Stevens, a 1990 graduate and member of the 1990 boys outdoor track team being inducted today, died after a brave battle with a sudden illness at the age of 50. Anyone who knew Jeff or had the opportunity to be around him quickly understood the meaning of true friendship. He would simply do anything for anyone at any time, no questions asked. To honor him, we ask that his father, committee member Pete Stevens, Jeff's wife, Deanna, and his children, Peter Jr. and Bridget, join us at the front of the stage to accept Jeff's team plaque. Thank you all very much. Well, someone has to be last. And I can assure you that this group of young men, the word last wasn't in their vocabulary because they didn't see that happen at all during their years at Fitchburg High School. Our final induction of the afternoon, the 1990 boys outdoor track team.
We just mentioned it a few minutes ago. The 1990s was a great time to be a Red Raider. Between the success of the football and track teams, the two basketball teams, and the emergence of the field hockey team as a tough out, it all began with the class of 1990's senior year. And when one looks closely, the 1989-1990 school year might just be one of the last great athletic years in the history of Fitchburg High School. 1991-92 is right up there, given the Central Mass titles won by the previously inducted football and yet to be inducted boys basketball teams in that year. So too is 2000-2001 with football and girls basketball. But when it comes to all-around excellence, take a listen and think of the hardware brought into the school just in that 1989-90 year alone. 1989 girls cross country, state title, Central Mass championship. 1989-1990 girls basketball, state runner-up, CMAS championship. 1989-90 boys basketball, CMAS runner-up. And our inductees today, 1990 boys outdoor track, multiple titles, third in the all-state meet. We have already enshrined the two girls' teams, and rightfully so. At some point, that 1990 boys basketball team may find its way to the second floor someday. That last one, though, is the one we focus on today. And while what the young men under Chris Woods' charge in the spring of 1990 did put a neat bow on that school year, it should be noted that it was just a continuing dominance by FHS spring track that had started the year prior. To learn more about this wonderful team, we welcome Fitchburg High School Hall of Fame coach Chris Woods to the dais.
So there's like 12 or 13 pages here. But I wanted to assure you it's really about the font size. Things changed over 32 years, including my eyes. I want to congratulate all the inductees here today on your accomplishments as members of the Red and Gray. I want to thank Barney Keenan for his little story. Barney, I feel like I lived that thing too. Erky Kootenin, Eddie Gastingay, UMaine, baby, all the way. Before I begin, I'd like to extend my special thanks to Mark Jackson, who was inducted earlier in the program. Mark, you may not know this, but you were a major incentive for me to coach. I had recently returned to school to work on my master's in '82, and that spring I decided to become a track and field official. The first major meet I worked was in Gardner. It was either a district or state event, and I knew Fitchburg would be there. When I graduated 6 years earlier, we had a team with over 50 kids on it. I waited for the FNL bus to arrive that day, and when the doors opened, I expected to see 20 or 30 kids get off the bus. Instead, the doors opened, and there was Mark Jackson, first one off, along with a handful of teammates. And I remember saying to myself, that's not right. Where's the rest of the team? On that day, I vowed that if I had a chance to coach, I would change this. 1 year later, I got my chance to be an assistant, and the year after that, head coach. Of course, I needed someone to assist me, and lo and behold, who was available? Why, Mark Jackson. Mark, what more could I have said to you? Your Norwich background, your USMC, we were a perfect match. Anything I needed, all I had to do was ask. The boys responded to you extremely well, and yes, we've heard this several times today, finally referring to you as Action Jackson. You set the standards and expectations for future assistant coaches I would coach with for the rest, of my coaching years. Thank you. Because of that, in 1990, we had 63 kids. 8 years later, and it was without doubt the most successful team I ever coached. They were special. None of that season would have been possible without the great coaching staff we had. Craig Shalafoo, who was Mark Jackson reincarnate. He was a perfect replacement, another Norwich guy. Coach Foo, as he was finally referred to, worked with our horizontal jumpers and conducted our sprint drills. Steve Shifty LeBlanc, head girls coach, worked with our throwers and hurdlers. And if I miss any of the other events you guys covered, you know what I'm talking about. Kathy Eckley, who along with Craig became two of my early educational friends and colleagues. When we worked together at B.F. Brown, Kathy assisted with the javelin and worked with me closely when it came to running the kids through the workouts. Don Woods, my father, who besides being willing to help anywhere, became a man of wisdom and encouragement. Ken Caraba, graduate of '85 and former runner for us, who asked if he could help with distance. Ken was a doer and often ran the workouts with the kids, whether it was road work or track work. And lastly, although technically not an outdoor coach, Ed Gastingay, who coached cross country. I knew that any boy Ed coached was well prepared to run the distance events. The combination of all this great coaching and camaraderie set the stage for the spring of 1990. I knew back in '89 that we would be a powerhouse in '90 if I could just get the boys to buy in. '89, as Sean mentioned, we went undefeated with a small core of seniors and a very large group of juniors. When these juniors became seniors in 1990, I referred to them as men amongst boys, and they did not disappoint. At this time, I have to thank this group of seniors by name. Derek Aldridge, Brandon Auger, Darren Bennett, Robert Barbarian, Eric Caldwell, Matthew Carden, Craig Cormier, Mike DiGeronimo, Kevin Dupuy, Eric Guerin, Kevin Haslam, John Langlois, Chris Montori, Nathan Newsham, Jason Primadio, Marcus Pezzolezzi, Ted Raymond, Eric Salinga, Jeff Stevens, and Yval Stewart. Their collective leadership cannot be overlooked. Back then, besides great coaches, we needed great leadership, too. One particular afternoon in the early spring of '90, I asked Craig to keep the underclassmen busy. Excuse me. I get emotional at this stuff. And I asked our seniors to come to the clubhouse. I had a few motivational moments in my coaching career, but I enjoyed this one the most. As an FHS grad myself, I knew firsthand what it was like to be a senior and compete on a championship team. The speech I gave, clever titled, was, "There isn't anything you're going to do this spring that I didn't do," when I was a senior speech. I don't know if that was really good or bad, but that's the way I went. So many traditions back then were a must experience for a future graduate. Painting the rock, the junior-senior relay, the prom, senior skip day, yeah, we had those too. You name it, I wanted them not to miss out. But I also wanted them to demonstrate good decision-making and commitment. I asked them to take a look around in the clubhouse and look at the walls, which, yeah, there's a few football trophies in there, but there's a heck of a lot more track and field trophies and plaques. I told them they had a chance to make history, to be Central Mass champions. They just had to buy in. And boy, did they ever. Sean Sweeney, as always, you did an excellent recap of our season in the program write-up, so no need for me to review it all. Perhaps for me, out of all the many memorable moments that happened that season, the two that will live on forever, in my mind, were the mile relay at the district championship at Neshoba, and a week later, our team's effort at the all-state meet. I think I'm turning this around. At Neshoba, we hadn't beaten St. John's mile relay team in 2 previous head-to-head competitions. So when it came down to the final race, I had to hide my fears and doubts. I walked up to sophomore Jason Damaris and the 3 seniors, Brandon, Darren, and Yval, as they were preparing to run. And I said, "Boys, it's simple. You win this race, we win this meet. No pressure." I turned around and I walked away, hoping this might motivate them and that they would recognize the moment, for it was a true moment in time. As the race unfolded, Jason and Brandon kept us close through the first 2 legs. It was right around the end of the second leg that my good friend and fellow coach, Rich Riley, whose Marlboro team had won the '89 championship, whispered in my ear, "It's not over yet, Chris." As he said this to me, and me still with doubts, Darren came off the final corner of the 3rd leg, and in simple track terminology, blew away the St. John's runner down the straightaway. Sorry, it was just an awesome moment. It was perhaps the finest relay leg I have ever witnessed at the high school level. The lead Darren established led to our 4th and final leg, which was to be run by none other than Yval, whose first name is Love, spelled backwards. And boy, did I love that moment. Yval was the school record holder in the quarter mile and had won the individual quarter mile earlier in the meet. Simply put, it was no contesta. Once Yval took the baton, 50 seconds later, we were district champions. Finally, a week later, we went to Bridgewater State College for the All-State Championship. Only 1 division back then. It was easily over 100 degrees on the track that day. If you've ever been to Bridgewater, there is no shelter from the sun, and it was a long time before the invention of the pop-up tent. The boys completed extremely well in the meet. Craig scored points in the 2-mile, and Yval scored points in both the long jump, as well as stunning the field in the quarter mile by beating the 2 favorites from Brockton and Cambridge, Rindge, and Latin, respectively, to win the state title in the event. In so doing, Yval became the first state champion I had the privilege to coach. Our mile relay time wasn't our best that day, but I couldn't have been more proud. Keep in mind, back in 1990, trials were run for both the 300 hurdles and the quarter mile. That meant Darren ran 2 300s before his quarter mile relay leg, and Yval ran 2 quarter miles before he ran the relay for the 3rd quarter mile. Oh yes, I might also mention Darren and Naval had already competed in the triple jump and long jump, respectively, where they both made the finals. To this day, I'll always feel badly for Jason and Brandon, who had to bake in the heat all day, waiting to run the relay. It wasn't ideal, but it was what it was. The significance of the team finishing third in the meet will always be another huge highlight in my career, and I owe it all to this fine group of young men. I want to thank you all once again for your commitment that spring. It was as previously mentioned, truly a special season. At this time, I would ask that all members of the 1990 team and our coaches are present today to please stand for recognition. At this time, thank you. Yes, I don't even recognize half of you, but maybe after we can talk. But thank you very much for coming. I'd ask that this time that all members of the team, including the coaches who are here today, to come up to this side of the stage. Yes? Yep. Okay. I now want to thank all of you for being here with us today.
Thank you.
And I'll always be grateful. Yeah, we want you gentlemen and coaches up on the stage, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. Over there.
Track members, just go over there and grab your plaque, and then we're going to come all up on stage for a team photo. We're going to take a team photo. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming today. I want to thank you all for your continued support of Fitchburg High School, Fitchburg High School athletics. Please drive safely. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.